Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about the PlayStation 6 because a very strange leak has come out from Moore's Law is Dead. This is a YouTuber and a journalist that's posted a bunch of top secret Sony documents in the past. In fact, he's gotten in trouble legally from Sony for a bunch of his leaks about the PlayStation 5 Pro before that officially came out. But last night, he posted some very strange documents, some stuff about Sony's next gen, about the future of PlayStation. And it turns out that the PS6 isn't going to be one console or two consoles, it's going to be three consoles. And one of them is going to be a super powered Nintendo Switch, a handheld that's dockable, that's playable, and is actually kind of cheap. Now, we're going to talk about this because it sounds like next gen, according to these specs, is not going to be very visually impressive. It sounds like the PlayStation 6 is, of course, going to be more powerful, but the leaps between consoles, the gap is getting narrower. It sounds like the big push is to find extra markets to basically say, okay, how can we have our own dedicated handheld? How can we basically beat everybody else at their game? And it sounds like the major focus of this is to have next gen for cheap. Let's talk, because these leaks, it seems like a lot of PlayStation fans are split. They're saying, I'm glad that next gen is coming, but these specs, this price, this prospect, not exactly thrilling. Let's break it down. Hi, hope you're having a great day. And if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, this is a transcription, basically in layman's talk, being done by Nib over here on Twitter, because honestly, Moore's Law is Dead. I like his content. I am going to link his video at the top of the description box, but I'll be honest, his stuff is incredibly obsessively detailed. Literally, cost, benefit charts, calculations, presentation data, and stuff about how this information came out. But let's talk about this as layman, because I'm just a normal gamer. I'm not here to sell you a graphics card. I am here to tell you what is the best deal and the best games. That's my job, right? And I gotta be honest that in a lot of ways, I do feel like we're kind of bumping up against photorealism with graphics. I do think we've very much kind of entered this almost post-graphics world. At this point, I just want my games to run good. I just reviewed Metal Gear Solid Delta yesterday, did a big video about that. It's blown up, by the way. Thank you for that. But that game does not run very well. It looks photorealistic, but it doesn't run very well. I gotta be honest, if PlayStation 6 has the graphics of the PlayStation 5, but the crazy frame rate of PC games, personally, I'd be thrilled about that. But let me start by breaking down the three separate flavors of the PS6, because this is perhaps the strangest thing that's causing the most debate, whether it is good or bad. They're going to basically do what Xbox did, which is a low-cost, cheap version, which this person is calling the PlayStation 6 Series S. This is going to be a smaller console, less power, probably less cooling, obviously, $300 to $400. Now, this is the one I think is probably what a lot of people are the most curious about. A PlayStation 6 handheld. This will be $400 to $500, so basically, even then, about the cost of a Nintendo Switch 2, dockable and handheld. To me, that does sound interesting. I've actually seen a lot of people already debating about that. PlayStation 6 will be dockable, and Sony may be targeting a price point to compete with the Nintendo Switch 2. This is according to the new leak by Moore's Law is Dead. All right, a lot of people are like, wow, big if true, that would be a day one buy for me. We're looking at a potential Steam Deck 2 in the next 2 years, more ROG Ally-like handhelds, and a entrenched Nintendo Switch 2 fanbase, so lots of competition. I've said this in other videos, but I do think the next gen is going to be the handheld wars. And I think, honestly, I'm most curious about that. I am a big fan of handhelds. I just think the idea of being able to game at the gym or on trips and stuff, to me, very fascinating. I am willing to do those sacrifices too, resolution or brightness, whatever it takes to make the game run good and have a good battery life on a handheld. To me, it's cool to be able to pass my save back and forth and stuff, right? Okay. And of course, finally, the high-end performance console, the proper PlayStation 6 as we currently know it, which will be a $550 to $700 console. Now, Multiple leakers have come out and said that essentially Sony is trying to find a way to make this as absolutely dirt cheap as possible. That basically everything is getting so dang expensive, and they realize that if they make this too pricey, it's absolutely going to bomb. So their goal is, no matter what, to make it cheaper than the PS5 Pro. That's the talk that's going around. All three are rumored to be launching in late 2027, but could slip. Prices are estimates based on analysis of basically the chips and stuff like that. In a twist of irony, after all that noise about Xbox Series S holding back this gen, it appears PlayStation may be doing their own Xbox Series S situation. Now, I'm not going to go super into the details of like the raw power of it, but basically it does sound like the system is going to be more powerful. The handheld one is going to have a dock boost, which is currently what the Nintendo Switch 2 is doing. That's interesting. Here's the part. Here's like the more layman's part of it. CPU-wise, each Zen 6 core will be roughly double the performance of a PS5's Zen 2 cores CPUs, plus an additional 20% or performance by having separate gaming-only cores. Basically, it sounds like it is going to be beefy. GPU-wise, we're looking at faster performance in docked mode, but ray tracing performance in docked mode. Okay, so it does seem like, honestly, the handheld one I think is what I'm the most curious about. I'm curious about the screen. I always bring up battery life, but God, I hate when a console has really, really good graphics and absolutely terrible battery life. I'm curious about that handheld version the most, though, for sure. Coupled with FSR4 or better, plus the much better CPU, the lower-priced console and handheld are expected to perform similar or better than the PlayStation 5 when optimized. The handheld will also easily outperform the ROG Ally X, which isn't a huge surprise. Technology advances pretty quick. Obviously, it better be better than the current consoles, right? And utterly destroy the Nintendo Switch 2 while potentially being cheaper than both. Now, again, not a big shock. We're talking about, 2 years in the future? 2 years, maybe 3 years in the future? Yeah, your system better be a lot more powerful and cheaper than the current stuff, right? Unfortunately, it still means the PlayStation 6 generation will essentially be held back in PS5-like performance the entire gen, which is deeply disappointing. Something a lot of developers have talked about on record that ended up pissing off some section of the Xbox fans was when people talked about the fact that making games for Xbox is difficult because Microsoft has a mandate. If you put a feature on Xbox Series X, it has to be on S. You don't have to have the same frame rate or resolution or load times, but everything that exists on the Series X has to exist on the Series S. Basically, if you have split screen co-op on one, you got to have split screen co-op on the other. But because the power SKUs are so different, it more than doubled the work. It made sometimes some games way longer, way harder to do. And people have basically said, yeah, man, I hate to be that guy, but it's way more expensive. I'd rather just put it only on the PS5 because I develop it for one system and it just works, right? So it seems like it's weird that they would copy that. Hopefully Sony does not make that same set of rules, but I think maybe they kind of have to. If you put something on PlayStation 6, it has to exist on our handheld, it has to exist on our console, and it has to exist on our lower powered handheld or our lower powered console. That could end up very, very, very much holding back the entire console generation. And honestly, it would be a baffling decision in my opinion. Like the Series X, PlayStation 6 Series S will be the lowest common denominator, and studios to make their games PlayStation 6 or next gen only happen to design around it. Even more ironic is that the Xbox Next Gen does not have a lower performance SKU model, only one performance model, though devs may still design it around the much weaker ROG Ally X. Why PlayStation is copying the split SKU of Xbox strategy is that fared so poorly and was publicly disliked by so many developers when they themselves previously stated split SKUs don't work. I'm unsure. I personally hate this game design and tech design pushing perspective. Though at least unlike Series S, there will be copious amounts of RAM, so hopefully fewer bottlenecks. Honestly, that's what a lot of the comments have been about. A lot of people are like, bro, I mean, this is the thing. It's easier to develop for a single full-powered system than multiple systems at once. I think I'm in a spot where I think I'm still excited about PlayStation 6, of course. Obviously, I love next-gen gaming. But I think what strikes my interest the most is how powerful that handheld is going to be and what the prices are going to be. If Sony can beat them on cost, if they can beat them on exclusives, I don't think the raw power of the system is going to be as important. But what do you guys think? Are you excited about PlayStation 6? It seems like most of the internet is saying, bro, we just got started. Like, if you think about it, we're 5 years into this console generation. Sales are way, way down at the PS5. I do think it's just because we're at a point where everybody that wants a PS5, they bought it, you know? The people that wanted a PlayStation 5 own it. So at this point, I do think that PlayStation's starting to sort of spin up those gears and go, okay, we need to have that next gen ready to go. I would not be surprised if we see a tease for it at the end of next year. At the end of 2026, maybe they start actually teasing about next gen, the way they had that long lead up to the PS5. But these have just been some off-the-cuff thoughts. How do you feel about the PlayStation 6? And how do you feel about the PlayStation 5? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.